Right. This is, as Becca just said, a present talk about front-end development and national security uncovered. Firstly, this is me. I joined BAE last year, and I've been working in front-end web design for just over a year now. Today, I'm going to try and give an insight into not only the development work I do, but also what it's like to work in national security. There is one small caveat here, where if I describe completely the work I do in national security, I will be fired from my job in national security. Um, so I'll try to give an insight without going into too much detail. As Becky said, I'll be available for a Q&A session after the talk, where I'll also get slightly squeamish about certain questions. So please accept my apologies in advance if I struggle to answer something. I want to start by describing a bit about my background and the route I took to enter national security. I didn't start my career aiming to be in national security, and I've taken a slightly obscure journey to get to this point. In light of the Careers Week, I was also hoping to describe how I joined BAE and how BAE provided a 16-week intensive training course in Manchester with QA Consulting. This was extremely useful to the work I've been doing, and I'm kind of happy that this is a preferred route to enter the company. I was then going to talk about what my role entails, including what technologies I use, what my day-to-day work is like, and what it's like to be part of an agile team. As I'm hoping people who are watching this have a wide range of careers, I'm hoping to give a brief description of non-technical roles in my team. For context, if you were watching the talk this time yesterday with Laura describing her role in UX, my team sits behind the UX team and try to create what they design. It's still creative, but it's more hands-on development. I'll then move on to what it's like to work in national security, and specifically what it's like to be part of BAE Applied Intelligence. One of the key points I want to describe is the importance of attracting people from different backgrounds into the sector. In my cohort of 20 graduates joining BAE through the NSAC routes last year, the majority were joining from the tech industry from one of the career paths. I think only 4 of us, including me, actually had a tech background before joining. And from my experience over the last 18 months, this considerably improves the workplace and makes my job a lot more enjoyable. The development teams are more open to new ideas and willing to try new methods or technologies, purely because many team members didn't start off by completing a degree in computing. I did complete a degree in computing, or to be specific, in information systems, which focused on the study of development methodologies and benefited from a distinct fondness of databases. This was at Staffordshire University, which I'll admit was my main choice because I lived in Staffordshire. Um, this led to me becoming a database analyst in a small Stoke-on-Trent computing firm. I spent 3 years there in total learning how to use mainly Microsoft SQL Server and very much enjoying the problem-solving nature of the work. It was easy to visualize the data structure within a database, so at least I found it was, and identify any weaknesses before they had the chance to cause trouble. Unfortunately, just at the time of the financial crisis in 2009, my one of the senior management decided to buy a very expensive Audi R8 car. And a few weeks after that, I was told that myself and the other sort of developers at my grade would receive a pay freeze for the next 3 years. Um, I wasn't totally happy about this, so I left to go backpacking for just over a year. Um, the image that you can see at the moment is on the right. This is my time as a mountain ranger in New Zealand. I decided to sort of get as far away from where I was at the time and ended up on the opposite side of the world in a wooden hut with no showers, no flushing toilets, no electricity, just on the side of a volcano. And that was sort of one of the best decisions I made to sort of move away from there. I know it's a little bit strange to be in a in a careers event saying move into the tech industry and be describing how I moved out, but this sort of changed a lot of how I was viewing things at the time. I will come back to this. Also, on this point, for any geeky people interested, that is Mount Narahui in the background, which was used for the Mount Doom in Lord of the Rings. That was sort of the high point of my backpacking when I was going around Southeast Asia, Australasia, North America, and having a lot of fun. When I came back, I returned to the job I had whilst at university and settled into being a steak chef for a few years. Given I was working nights, I had the days free to go running or cycling and gained a coaching qualification as a UK athletics coach in running fitness. I was also at Trenton Running Club, where I helped to start a junior running club that had originally only 2 members, and when I left, had over 50. Um, this is one of the things I thoroughly enjoyed, and I look forward to it every week. So, on that decision and how much I enjoyed that, I looked into becoming a teacher. This was a big step for me because up to this point, I was completely petrified of giving presentations, and I'm nervous, but I've got much better than I was. And the concept of trying to give presentations 4 or 5 times a day to lessons of 16-year-old children was kind of terrifying. But I taught secondary school ICT and computer science for 4 years, and I gained a lot from this experience. Um, this is the main reason I wanted to give the talk today about switching to the tech industry. There are many preconceptions about the tech industry, which were true 10 years ago, but are becoming out of date now. The problem I had in computing classes was trying to get students interested in computing, which was because there was a belief that only a certain type of person gets into programming. Breaking that preconception was rewarding, especially with some of the girls I taught who had absolutely no intention of choosing computer science as a GCSE option, mainly because existing classes were completely male dominated, which I'll admit, even from my point of view, was intimidating. Um, each class would have maybe just a few students that were quiet and lacked confidence, but had a strong analytical mindset, and they could manage computational thinking. You could see that they could visualize problems and understand computational thinking before they even attempted any code. It was these students who, with a bit of confidence building, became utterly brilliant developers. Um, it, this was one of the most rewarding parts of my job, actually convincing people to say this is a fantastic industry to get into, even after what I'd experienced and sort of getting a bit disillusioned with it. Being able to say, look, this is a growing industry. This is a good thing to get into. Try it, see if you like it. Eventually, I would ask them to mentor other students, and they would take on really difficult challenges. Uh, to be able to take someone who didn't really enjoy computer games and doesn't really have a tech background and having them then for some of them who were even struggling with maths and then push them to excel and being one of the best computing students in school, that was something truly special. Um, all the schools I worked in, I've managed to double the intake of computing option students because I managed to get across how exciting the industry is and how it's growing faster and further than any other industry in the world. This is what I'm still finding as a developer. Tech organizations are changing all the time and opportunities are everywhere. It seriously is a good thing to get into. I moved away from teaching to attend Keele University and complete a master's in advanced computer science. I wanted to get back into industry after 4 years as a teacher, but I was lacking confidence. And I was, after teaching code at GCSE and A level, I was also eager to get back into university after sort of enjoying the lectures during my PGCE. I had missed studying and uh, being on the other side of the fence to teaching. It was really nice to just complete some work and then have someone else mark it for me. It was a really nice novelty, and I did sort of struggle with confidence for this. Is the tech industry is intimidating because coding is generally seen as a different language, and if you are not sure about how to get into it, it's a big stumbling block to try and get over. After being in my masters for about 6 months, I did have a lot more confidence. And when I chose for my dissertation to look at machine learning, it wasn't because I had any experience in machine learning. It was because I was given the opportunity to work on something which was a mix of machine learning and augmented reality, and it sounded fun. Um, that's sort of been one of the key things I've always looked for at in my career. If something looks interesting and looks fun, it's worth going after and trying to grab. I worked with one of my lecturers, Dr. Bapadicha Mandel, and managed to write a paper on this, which was presented last year at the British Machine Vision Conference in Cardiff. Details of this are on my website if you're interested. After graduating, I set aside some time to find a job that I would find meaningful. One of the biggest tech employers in Stoke-on-Trent is Bet365, and it would have been an easy route to take a job with them, but I wouldn't have felt happy doing it. Seeing the role working in applied intelligence and national security seemed more rewarding. When I was working in Stoke-on-Trent on financial fraud as a database analyst, I was working with some of the payday loans companies. And once you've spent the whole day trying to figure out problems and help people, it's not the best feeling thinking that's sort of who you've been working for. Working in national security, it's a much more rewarding job, and it links a little bit more to the feeling I got when I was teaching. I know that I'm making a difference and I'm making making this country a better place. At this point as well, I was hoping to say a bit about the jobs that I refused, because I'm aware that people are going to be applying for jobs after seeing this, and I wanted to give a few warnings about the jobs which I could have taken but decided not to. There were two in particular where I was offered a role, one in Leeds and one in Cambridge. The first one in Leeds, I was offered the interview. I went up to Leeds, and the job was looking at the kind of code that I wanted. It was in front-end web design, and it looked kind of interesting. But as soon as I entered the development environment, there wasn't a good atmosphere. Most of the developers were around 22 to 24 years old. Um, there was You could sort of tell that they maybe didn't get on with each other that well. There wasn't You could sort of feel it in the air without really seeing anything. One of the key people that I saw in the room who seemed to be managing everyone else was maybe 2 years older, and you could tell that he was managing everyone else because he had the largest chair in the room. Um, to be honest, that gave a bit of a bad view of what it could be like and sort of put me off. It's kind of important, especially how the industry has changed, to be in a nice team where you enjoy working. And this is what I enjoyed as a teacher. This is what I've enjoyed the coaching, and this is what I enjoyed as a steak chef. Being around a good set of people makes every part of life a little bit better. This is what I was worried about with the job in Leeds. In Cambridge, there was none of that. It was a really friendly interview. It was a good place to be, and the the atmosphere was absolutely brilliant. The one thing that pushed against it was that they wanted me to work on technology which I had stopped using as a database developer 10 years ago. Um, that brings me on to why BAE was a very good area to move into. BAE offered a 16-week intensive training course with QA consulting. And if you look at some of the things that they offered to teach on there, it's the very forefront of what is currently being used. When I started to work at BAE, I was immediately able to sink into the role and enjoy writing code without having to spend time feeling left out on learning new technologies. The trainers there were extremely dedicated and a lot more intense than anything I'd had during my masters. There was a really good sense of community with the rest of the NSAT cohort, and there were social activities such as mini golf competitions and cinema visits. It was a comforting, friendly way to join the company. Some of the technologies I've used whilst I've been working in front-end design, most of it has been JavaScript. I joined the company and started working half with Java, half with JavaScript. But JavaScript is the only one where I'd actually used it during my masters, and I understood most of I was used to working with it. GitHub, React, and Docker, I hadn't used until I joined QA. They taught me all of it there during the course. I think we had a week on some of them and a few weeks on others. And Redux is something that I've learned on the job, and it's been there. I wanted to sort of show on there, nowhere on there is anything about databases despite me spending 3 years as a database designer. Because it's 10 years old, it's not really knowledge which is up to date anymore, which I generally see as a good thing. I don't expect in 5 years' time to be working on exactly the same things I'll be working on now. I expect there to be new technologies pretty much every 6 months to a year, and that's what we're finding at the moment. Every single time we move on to a new product, we're on to new technologies. To give a little bit more detail about the projects I work on, without giving too much detail about the projects I work on, what will generally happen is that a client team will want to be able to make use of some data. My team will be asked to produce a technical design and potentially a UX design to create a piece of software to efficiently display the data or allow it to be processed or analyzed. This will involve data visualization, which is being able to see patterns in data, for example. The data manipulation is making sure the data is easier to read more than anything else. And data exploration is being able to dig into the data and find useful or novel information which can be acted on. I can't really describe much more than that because I'm very limited as to what I can say. Because of my current level of security clearance, everything I do is either analogies or code names, or it's. I don't tend to get told what I'm working on is actually going to be used for. As soon as I actually talk to somebody who has that high side clearance, they'll get very, very nervous about what they can say and what they can't say. It does make it interesting, and with some of the work, you generally know roughly what it's going to be used for, but there's never that clarification. It's always an obscure example which you're given, and then you have to sort of make something to suit that need, and then that gets taken and used for something different. Um, it's a strange area to work in, but it is fun. The way that if I'm looking at the day-to-day work of what I do, a business analyst will come up with a software task for us to complete, well, for my team to work on. This needs to be made into a workable product, so it is split into smaller tasks. Each task is taken on by a developer, and all the developers are coached by a Scrum Master. I will talk more about the different roles a little bit later on. Each team and a development team has to be small enough here so that they can be comfortably fed on 2 pizzas, and that is the actual definition of how big the team can be. There isn't any description of how big the pizza is, and there does tend to be a lot of argument over how much pizza people will have, but that's the general size. At the moment, my team has about, I think, 8 developers. Well, it's 6 developers and a few others who are working on a similar projects. Each task will initially start off with one developer, and then the task will be passed with another developer so that it can be tested properly and testing can be added to it. It will then be passed to the rest of the team so that all the team can review it for quality control. And then after everyone has seen it and approved it, it can become part of the software task. This is different to how I was working before with databases, because with databases, I was given a task and it was a case of I did the entire thing, or I worked with one other person and we both worked through all of this. This is much more of a team-based activity. Every 2 or 3 weeks, we will review how we're working. We will say, does there need to be more team building games, especially working remotely, as people are sort of missing being in the office, or anything similar like that? Do we need to move regular meetings times around? Do we need to complain about the development software that we're using and demand that we have something better? It, This is generally managed by the Scrum Master, who we can all have a whinge at and sort of make sure things are good and improve our time. The key point I wanted to say with this, like I said, about the database work, it's very much a team activity now. You don't do an entire project on your own. You're always working with other people, and that makes it a better environment to be, because if you're struggling with something, then there's always someone to go to ask for help with, and it's generates a very supportive atmosphere. I much prefer this than the work I was doing before, and it's very much improved with some of the people I get to work with. On that note, I want to go back to what I was saying earlier about a certain personality associated with programming. I initially disregarded this as a stereotype before realizing a good portion of programmers can quite proudly fit into this category. While it is useful to have a few programmers and like this, it can cause limitations if this is the entire team. The teams I'm working with in BAE so far have included a well, still an existing army captain because he's in the reserves. My line manager has a PhD in lasers. My scrum master is a rugby coach, and I also have a mix of biologists, chemists, and linguists. This makes it a very entertaining environment to be in. It produces a friendly work environment where different backgrounds are accepted and used. Every different field has something different to offer into a development team, and this is one of the main reasons I enjoy my job. I get to chat with army captains about their leadership training at Sandhurst. I get encouraged to do well at my job by a rugby coach. I get to introduce the Stoke-on-Trent dialect to someone who can speak 5 languages. Um, it's a it's a similar mix of backgrounds to what I encountered during my masters, where then there were physicists, journalists, and accountants, and they were all very invested in what they were doing. It helps generate a culture of curiosity of learning. No one I work with is entrenched in a set way of thinking or intent on only using certain languages because they understand how they work. Um, to that end, I was hoping to go over a few of the, I wouldn't say non-technical, but roles where it's been best described as where technical empathy is required rather than actually physically programming. The first of which is a Scrum Master. I've worked with 2 Scrum Masters while I've been at BAE, and I've loved the fact that there are people specifically employed to make sure that I'm okay and I'm not struggling with my work or having any problems. I will talk to the Scrum Master every day to say what I'm doing, and they will see if there's any help they can give me or anyone they can contact to help me with my dev work. I think all the roles on the screen are accurate for a Scrum Master, um, and they can do a lot to promote a positive work environment. Of the Scrum Masters I've worked with, I would say at some point every single part of that is very true. They've done all of those roles. Um, One of the Scrum Masters I work with was initially a biologist and a girls rugby coach. As I said, she came into the tech industry with completely no knowledge of coding and only a limited view of what a Scrum Master is, but has now used her knowledge and of coaching to support her teams and is a great asset to the business. She can make a lot of the work very, very enjoyable. Um, Also, there is the role of a business analyst. I work with 2 business analysts at the moment. Um, a BA will talk to the client and help them to solve difficult problems. That's generally the main role. Again, I will struggle to give examples because I'm not allowed to give examples, but this is essentially someone looking at how a business is running and then offering to provide assistance and make data visualization, manipulation, and exploration easier. My current BA has a background in chemistry, so while he wouldn't be able to do any of the dev work that I'm doing or the other devs are doing on a daily basis, he knows enough to be able to translate what the client wants into software requirements. And he understands, for example, if we have issues with Docker, what that means, and he'll be able to point us to developers who can help overcome the problem. The term he gave for this is having technical empathy, which I very much agree with. That it's empathy and also being able to translate needs. But it's an interesting role. Also, I wanted to say how a account manager um, is used. This is much more of a strategic role, looking for new areas of the company to venture out into and managing current projects. Whenever I talk to the account managers, I learn more about what business they're doing, what the business is doing, and I kind of share their excitement about the new possibilities or talking about how the company fits into the national security of the country. It's having a knowledge of what's going on at a high level and sort of what new possibilities there are. One of the account managers I work with knew that I'd worked on machine learning and got me included on the artificial intelligence steering group. So I currently get to see how BAE are utilizing machine learning methods and the plans they have to progress this, which is incredibly exciting. Um, the account manager I talked to about this role, about his role, does not have a technical background. He transitioned over from being an army captain, and from my point of view, spends most of his time networking. That's networking with people, not with cables, though. Um, all of these backgrounds provide a range of qualities that would be less likely if everyone came from a single background. I've given a few examples here. The first is adaptability. Um, when the lockdown started and the switch to remote working was initiated, it was a lot of the calls that we had afterwards with the whole business to sort of review progress and see how things were going were generally met with surprise at how well everyone was adapting. Because of the mix of environments and that everyone was naturally used to having to adapt quite quickly, we did extremely well. There was also the advantage of people didn't need to commute anymore, and suddenly nobody wanted to take any holiday. As a company, we did quite well when lockdown hit because people were just sort of focused on what they were doing and they were willing to take on the struggle of switching. Um, for creativity, creativity is generally everywhere, from team building activities to new ways of working to new ideas born out of having an open mindset. That also leads on to strategic vision. Because people are arriving from other industries, they will have different views of how the company could operate, and they're more willing to offer ideas, which are generally quite well accepted. Um, this also leads on to developing people. If you're starting with limited technical knowledge, this provides an empathy to anyone else who is struggling. So there's never any issues asking for help, and everyone's always very supportive. There's also courage from this. If you spent 6 months learning a new technology and then get told you need to switch and learn a new technology, you'll generally have the confidence and it won't be an issue and you can go after it. If you have spent 4 years learning computing and you've spent years working on a single technical area, you'll tend to lose that flexibility and you won't have the courage to try new things. By moving into it from a different background, you have that flexibility that otherwise wouldn't be there. And it does help as well, working in national security, that similar to being in teaching, uh, by being in a team where everyone is eager to do well because they all have the same motivation and they know what they're working for. Um, some of the projects that I can talk about are along again with the I can talk about three projects that I haven't worked on any of these, but I can say these are some of the things that I've done because there's less security constraints around them. The first is the child exploitation and online protection. When I was a teacher, I used to give lessons about COP and try to move on their e-safety advice. Um, sorry. Um, it was a very good feeling to be able to switch over and actually start work for a company that's supporting COP and helping people to track down paedophiles and actually make the country safer for children. The second logo on the right is regarding the Get Safe Online, which is giving practical advice to individuals on how to protect themselves, their computers or mobile devices, and their businesses against fraud, identity theft, viruses, and other problems, and generally making sure that there's less crime going on. Um, And finally, we do work closely with the Ministry of Defence, and that's in cyber operations, specialist communications, intelligence-led solutions, secure data sharing, which we've had a lot of success with decision support, and also decision support and data analytics management. I can list those. I don't want to go into any more detail over them because I'm nervous of going into detail about them. Um, Finally, I wanted to sort of describe the top point, or the best points I have of actually being in BAE. Um, when I was teaching, I really enjoyed being able to develop people. I've been able to see my students do well. Currently, I'm leading team building games with my team, and seeing them sort of build confidence and get better at their work. That's a lot of fun. When I was coaching, I used to sort of give plans to my athletes and actually sort of try and help them along and say you can do a lot better with this. You can and sort of you can see them improve, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm mentoring any new starters and seeing them gain confidence. When I was a chef, we had a fantastic environment where you could come in, you can have a laugh with everybody, and that's still where NBA at the moment. It's a positive, friendly environment where everyone's sort of happy to have a chat first thing in the morning. Um, when I was backpacking, I met people from many, many backgrounds because I spent 14 months going everywhere. I still have that at the moment. I'm able to talk to people from different backgrounds and have lots of nice chats with them, especially virtual coffees at the moment. Um, and they all have the shared similarity that they're in national security. They know they're making a difference to things, and they're eager to do well with it. This makes it a really nice culture to be in. Um, I wanted to finish on this slide because I see these as the best parts about my role and why I enjoy my job in national security, and nowhere on that list is any mention of coding. I enjoy the coding, but it's the environment around the coding that's enjoyable, and it's because of the people I work with. When I was being interviewed for this role, I said I had a master's in computer science, and my interviewer wasn't really that bothered. He was more interested that I'd been a teacher, which, to be honest, still feels a little bit weird, but I understand what they were looking for. If you're interested in joining the tech industry, then even if it's just for a few years, try it out, it's worth it. I was a teacher for 4 years, and even though I didn't stick with it as a career, I wouldn't be giving this talk without the confidence I built presenting every day to students. It's a brilliant area to get into, and I just wanted to finish by saying good luck to everyone who's currently looking to join the sector. Um, Thank you for listening.